Okay, hi guys, and welcome to part 2 in a mini-series on classic Casios. And today I'm going to be reviewing a watch that I've actually owned over a month. I bought it used, very highly anticipated, and quite a momentous step for Casio. It is, of course, a full metal new part of their vintage collection, as you see on the box there. An update of the classic, which we discussed in part 1, to the AW158. Now I really should do a quick wristwatch check. I'm actually wearing the Dan Henry, incidentally, which I also recently reviewed. And today I want to answer the question, is it worth, closer to $100 in price? Actually, you can get them for about 75 and so on. Now before we review this, please don't forget to like this video. But as always, let's start with a little bit of history. Now, in part 1, I discussed why Casio is such an important brand and why true watch enthusiasts and casual watch wearers respect the company. And I gave a very in-detail backstory to contextualize not only that video, but this video as well. So I do highly recommend you check that out if you missed it. But to quickly summarize, I addressed a common misconception of how many erroneously see Casio as just a cheap watch and nothing more, unaware of how they actually revolutionized the industry, pioneered so much technology we very much take for granted today, and are fundamentally an important part of horological history. But what is important to note here is how and why the steel A1000M, how it came to be exactly. Its origins are undoubtedly the unisex versatile AW158, which was released in 2001, which itself was a more formal, evolved stepping stone to going full steel like we have today. And that was an alternative to the classic F91W from 1989. Gold tone followed in 2009 with an updated electroluminescent backlight and updated module. All of these aforementioned watches are influenced by their ancestors in the 80s and 70s that gave them their definitive design language and style. So why did Casio move towards producing more plastic and resin watches over steel? Predominantly plastic-based digital watches became the dominant sellers for Casio during the 90s and 2000s, as it was naturally a cheaper material than steel. And as digital watches became ever more affordable, solid steel fell out of favor. During the 70s, it was the complete opposite. Casio was being seen as an exciting cutting-edge technology, and they actually positioned themselves as more of a luxury product compared to the ultra-affordable tough tools and fashionista accessories they have become in recent decades. In 2019, Casio finally decided to appease the fans and return to their solid steel roots and released the A1000 that were marketed once again as an upscale premium successor to the AW158, 59 and 68s we reviewed in part 1. So let's start with dimensions first. At the widest point we have 38.1 millimeters, beautiful slenderness of 7.6 millimeters, lug to lug we're looking at 39.5, and a lug width of 18 millimeters. So an absolutely fantastic size for both him and her. Functionally speaking, it operates exactly the same as its predecessors. If we flip it over, we can see we have the light with the 3-button setup mode, start and stop in exactly the same configuration. The material is entirely stainless steel for almost everything with the exception of mineral glass. It has the newer 3479 module and features the same complications and accuracy as before, but actually in a slimmer size, which is part of the refinement in the module. The electroluminescent backlight is absolutely outstanding, as you can see there, very equally bright, and it's a lovely kind of cobalt blue that has the numerals in a sky blue to contrast. Very effective indeed. And as you saw in part 1, it's a million times better than the LED illumination, even if it does shave a few years off the battery life. And while we are on the subject of the dial, around the liquid crystal display, you'll see this very alluring and rich faux Tahitian coloured mother of pearl, which it's like a deep opal and really does come to life in certain lights. Some may wrongly associate, or more commonly associate, mother of pearl with feminine watches, but I have to say this is so understated, you don't really get that feeling. I love the directional brushing, the angles are a lot sharper than the predecessors, and I have to say the button action does feel higher quality compared to its predecessor. Now, this is mainly because the watch was actually designed around this newer module, so there's no plastic retainer ring. The fit and feel on the wrist is outstanding. Casio have done an excellent job of making it somewhere between the A158 and 68 in scale. It's certainly going to please a lot of wrists with its 38mm diameter, but more so for the smaller wristed, of course, unless you have the bigger wrist and you want to get that kind of hit of nostalgia. One discernible difference is the weight, however, being completely solid steel. Now, it's substantially heavier, but still light in comparison to traditional mechanical watches, of course. It has a reassuring 82 grams compared to the 50 grams of the 58 and 68. It's also extremely comfortable, mainly due to the thinness of it. I mean, it really does wear like a dress watch, but then of course this beautifully articulating and very fluid tapering mesh bracelet, which I think is a clever move, because mesh has kind of been a bit of a comeback trend of late, and I think the new Bond watch certainly started that off. It brings also a more luxurious quality, which is a logical choice if you're trying to make a higher end version of the previous really tinny folded bracelets of the past. And because this has a redesigned case here with the 18mm lug width, they've cleverly put little bolt action spring bars there, so it's a doddle to change out. Very nice detail indeed. And if we look at it from afar, you'll see how the tapering follows the line down. It's subtle, but it's a nice little refinement to the bracelet. And this of course is adjustable, so you can get the absolute perfect fit, and you just hook it in there and flip it closed, and it's nicely signed as well. So let's talk about the style and design. To further refine the watch, the top of the bezel, as you can see, is a brushed finish, and directional brushed finish, very reminiscent of the Royal Oak by AW158 and the Nautilus for that matter. Both Genta classics, of course, and icons. Was it deliberate? I think so. By kind of referencing these steel classic luxury watches, super luxury watches that revolutionized these higher end brands, they are indirectly drawing inspiration and suggesting that this is a kind of entry level equivalent. And talking of 70s revolutionary watches, it does have that slight futuristic feeling. It's as if Denys Lasden had designed it. The sides has that brutalist aesthetic, which I think lends itself to digital watches beautifully. I could imagine this being worn on Logan's Run or Solaris, or definitely Silent Running, or some kind of 70s sci-fi classic like that. Yeah, I would describe it as kind of retro sci-fi. The refinement continues on the dial. If I angle it like that, you can see how they've framed the displays. The Casio there is in a kind of embossed, raised lettering. Really, really nice touch. And the way the mineral glass is flush with the bezel, this would absolutely slide under a cuff. Very nicely done. The Royal Oak look is further accentuated by Casio retaining the rounded hexagonal case shape and angular button guards, or wings as they are referred to on the Nautilus. Now, talking of mother of pearl, I think is a really interesting choice of dial texture. I wasn't going to expect in a digital watch, I've got to be honest, because mother of pearl is actually quite an ancient luxurious material. I mean, in terms of watches, it's been used as decoration for centuries. Mother of pearl over more obvious blingy diamonds and other textures adds a sense of luxury, a bit of pizzazz without being too gaudy or obvious. Real mother of pearl is very expensive to produce and dangerous too, because of the particles of dust created are so fine when cutting the material. So you really have to have very skilled specialists to do it when they've cut it to a dial size, as well as being costly to source in the first place. But this faux mother of pearl does a good job of recreating that richness, that beautiful iridescent quality that is so bewitching without looking cheap. It's not too obvious. So let's talk about positives. Well, finally we return to true solid stainless steel, not kind of stainless steel in part and faux on the case as before. I think this is long overdue. I think they've also executed it amazingly well. You rarely do feel it when you wear it, mainly due to the exceptional construction. It feels very, very solid. This is a million miles away from its predecessor. In fact, it's quite an interesting experience having a Casio like this that feels like a luxury watch. You get that feeling, which I really am surprised. And yeah, it's gorgeous looking as well. Let's be honest. I love the attention to detail. There's a lot of it. The alluring shape, the seamless transition of the polishing, the balance of retro and kind of futurism at the same time. And they've done away with any kind of, as we see before, the extra colors, which I think adds for a more versatile watch. Ultimately, it's a very compelling mix of kind of sporty, dressy, and will definitely be fun to match sartorially. In many ways, this is actually the amalgamation of styles that Casio originally intended with the production of the first AW158 in the 2000s, and of course, if we go back to the beginning, the Casiotron in 1974. It's very cool that Casio have stayed true to this thinking and ideology, and it shows they know what they're doing. And once again, it kind of lends itself to a very versatile product that can do it all in any situation. And at the end of the day, that is what is beloved about digital watches like this. The most important thing for me when it comes to Casio watches is the nostalgia factor. It just makes me smile every time I wear my F91W. It takes me back to childhood. And I can happily report that it has not been abandoned with the A1000 series. You definitely get that. And if anything, it's kind of further accentuated. It feels like the Casio I always wanted in some strange way, or it's close to it. And I have to say, it's one of the most comfortable watches I've ever worn. It mostly also down to that mesh, of course, but the thinness, the weight, the scale, it's just so comfortable. And something I must mention, even though I did buy this used, I do appreciate the attention that's gone into the box. It's just a very unpretentious slide open box with a little pouch that you can actually reuse. It's very intelligently designed, but faithful to its lineage, and also I think forward thinking with style cues from other important moments in horology. So they've done a bang up job there. Now, surprisingly, there are quite a lot of negatives, almost as many negatives to this watch as there are positives. Now, compared to the 7-year battery life of the AW168, this is much shorter at only 3 years, but not the end of the world. It's easy to change out the battery. Secondly, the glass is only mineral. I would have loved to see sapphire glass. I think that would have really been a wonderful upgrade. The water resistance is also rather low at only 30 meters. Very disappointing indeed, and kind of undermines its ruggedness, its use in more sporty scenarios. And I think a good water resistance is one of the underlying important factors and helps to distinguish a do-it-all watch from those that are not. However, the main negative, and it's painfully obvious as I move it, is that dark screen. In some light, it's illegible. At other angles, you can't even see it. One of the worst negative displays I've seen, and I don't understand, because they've put out negative displays that are far better than this years ago, so they are capable of it. Something with this particular module, maybe because it's a newer module, who knows. And sometimes I find myself, even in decently lit rooms, having to push the button for the backlight just to check the time. It very much reminds me of those early LED pulsars, like the one James Bond wore. that you'd have to press the button to show the time. It's almost that bad. Now, I am actually contemplating buying the non-negative, which is like this, and then swapping them out. I did see a video on an excellent YouTube channel all about Casio watches. The guy did that, and it's a shame because I like the way the black works with the mother of pearl. Oh, and I almost forgot. One more big negative here. This has only been released in Europe and Japan. Why Casio did this, I have no idea. It's very confusing to me. It should have been released elsewhere around the world, really. Maybe it's foreshadowing future releases, I don't know. But I had to source this from Spain, from the used market. And it's also rather annoying because for many people who go to the mall or their local Casio dealer, you cannot try this on if you do not live in those countries. Why they decided this is a complete mystery to me. Are they trying to target specific groups of people? Perhaps the trendy, fashion conscious of Europe and Japanese cities. So, in conclusion, despite the many shortcomings, I still have enjoyed my time with this watch. It does feel like a luxury watch compared to those before it, so Casio delivered on the more premium experience. Undoubtedly, it's a bit like wearing a pair of comforting slippers of nostalgia. It really is. Is it worth $100? Well, yes or no. I think the hardcore Casio fan will absolutely lap it up and enjoy it. If you're not that into Casio, probably not. I do have a suspicion, however, that this is going to be replaced with a more fully realized version that will hopefully correct some of these wrongs. Personally, I'd be willing to pay double, even quadruple, for the upgrades that I mentioned. A fully swimmable version would definitely make this, a great do-it-all one-watch collection type of an affair. Have I decided to keep it? Who knows? We'll see. It's funny, it's nowhere near perfect, but yet I cannot help but enjoy it. Now, in closing, I would like to say that this is one of the best and simultaneously most frustrating Casio watches I've ever reviewed, to be honest. Mainly, I think, because of what it could have been. It's so close, it's definitely going in the right direction. But having said that, I am very excited to see what Casio do next. While it is undoubtedly far from perfect, there is so much promise here. Anyway guys, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very, very much for watching. Please don't forget to like this video, especially if you want to see more watches at this kind of price range. Don't forget to add your thoughts, queries, comments, opinions, all the rest of it down below, and I will catch you in the next one. Okay, ciao.